All right, good evening. Welcome to this week session. Okay, so as usual, we'll run through the markets over here and highlight some of the key opportunities available for the week. So last week has generally been really straightforward. We managed to catch some of our very nice trades. This includes, of course, the S&P, as well as the dollar yen, and the pound yen, right? But depending on whether you did actively manage the pound yen positions, right? For me, I personally got out at break even for pound yen. But for S&P and the dollar yen, it was a very nice little trade. Dollar yen, I managed to get it out at 1:3 risk to reward ratio. And then for S&P, just our typical targets, which is about 1:2 on average, right? I'll talk a little bit about those as we touch on them as we go down the list, right? But for now, let's start off with the dollar index first, okay? Now, dollar index, this week in general, we are kind of still expecting downside. Looking at the expected target here would be just the previous swing low around the 97.10. Generally, I would say you would not expect too much of a downside, but really just around this zone, right? This seems to be developing more of a crawl diagonal as it approaches the bottom, but I think this week here, the primary focus is still very much bearish, until proven otherwise, right? So as of now, we'll look at dollar weakness, okay? So if you go over to the euro, we're looking at upside, okay? We did manage to test this low here a couple of times, kind of like this area, to be honest. Was expecting last week to actually tag it again before the push. That would be ideal, where we can then look for, I would say more convicted bullish opportunities, but price started to move higher before that, right? So I think right now, short term wise, again within the week, we're still expecting upside, okay? Now, personally, between the euro and the pound, I would be more comfortable and more confident in pound dollar upside. The reason of that is because structurally, this gives me a clearer picture, right? This is a very obvious three-wave move. It's a flag, very nice little, tap onto the key level, and then a very nice little bounce as well. So between the euro as well as the pound dollar, okay, you can clearly see the structure wise, right? Well, both generally is to the upside. I would be more comfortable and more confident in pound dollar, right? So pound dollar here, definitely we're interested in the upside. We do have a pending order set in, but really depends on how prices will continue to develop. Ideally, we want to start to see some sort of a corrective pullback, right? If price continue to push higher from here, then we'll just need to reassess, where's our entry point as we progress from here, okay? But I think this structure and this pattern currently it's developing is quite straightforward, okay? We're kind of expecting more upside here. If we kind of put it into a channel structure, upside is there, right? The room for price to actually move higher is there. Just based on a very, very simple projection, if this is going to be a three-wave move, okay, the target is somewhere around 1.38. Right, target is somewhere around 1.38, which definitely is more than enough for us to capitalize on that move. Okay, so yep, this is definitely in my watch list for this week. We'll put in a bit more effort in monitoring this particular instrument, this particular pair. Okay. Next up is the Aussie dollar over here. Okay, so Aussie dollar, it's kind of similar to major pairs, right? We're kind of like again dollar weakness, so this is also pushing higher. However, this one here, to be honest, I'm not gonna be paying too much attention for the week. Okay, price is still currently pushing higher. Again, we'll not be looking at the trades at the top. We'll always want to wait. If you want to buy, we always want to wait for some sort of a pullback and correction, right? So this here has a nice little tap. Initially, we were looking at this possibility, right, where somewhere here the market might still come back down before the push up. We were cautious last week, so as of today, we did see that break, right? We did see that very, very clean break to the upside as of now. So we are not going to be holding on to that bearish view anymore, kind of updated, where this can some sort be a leading structure where we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as a leading diagonal, and a corrective pullback here would then open up more upside as well, and then we'll assume that this is the low, right? So that's the current view on the Aussie dollar. So generally, we just need to wait for that corrective pullback before committing to the buy trade setup. Okay. Dollar Canadian. So dollar Canadian here is generally bullish. The details that I'm a little bit cautious on is, of course, you can see this key level hasn't really been broken. Okay. So this also opens up the possibility where price can actually come back down, tag that level, only start going higher, right? Because this is still structurally a possible pattern. We did talk about this last week as well, okay, where we can't expect price to actually take out this low. Yeah, we'll really keep an eye on this. I think right now on the lower time frame, as of now, right, we don't really have a clear setup to get involved in the buy. So anyway, you just be patient for now, right? I don't think you want to be selling into this move. But if the market were to really just pull back and tag the key level before the bounce, we'll, to be honest, just wait for that tag, right? We'll wait for price to take out that low, see if we can get a rejection back to the upside, and then we'll look for the buy trade instead. Okay, so that's the view on dollar cap as of now. Okay, we'll see how things continue to develop within a week. Dollar yen. Okay, dollar yen is like one of the, I would say, one of the better trades, in the last 1 or 2 weeks. Very nice little potential risk to reward ratio trade. Obviously, the expectation, of course, is the possibility of coming all the way towards this zone, right? It came quite close, but did not. But nonetheless, it's still a pretty solid one, right? I personally managed to get out a trade at 1:3. So we'll talk a little bit about this as part of a review, so you can also pick up on the things to look out for, understand, I would say the reasons, right, behind why I took that trade and how did I manage that. So dollar yen, last week we were here, right? I mean, last week we saw price take out that zone, and then we saw this nice little push, right? That's where we dropped to the hourly time frame, right? And if I kind of look back at before we got tagged in, this was the setup, right? Again, for those of you who've been following, it's always been the same setup, okay? So the beauty about this, again, is something that is very, very repeatable, very mechanical as well. Once you get it, you just need to look up for it when it occurs. It's a high probability setup, right? Obviously, you don't just look at the setup all the time. That's where the framework ESC comes in. We talk about you need to have a clear direction. You need to have the context to kind of support the setup, right? Which on a high time frame, that's where we have all of this, right? So the high time frame, we have the clear directional bias. We have the key areas here that we identify, right? And the market kind of gave us a very nice setup, right? That's where you can see the liquidity sweep. That's where you can see this impulsive push. Not really kind of closing below this, but again, we have the context of the higher time frame. We have the order block here. We have the fair value gap here. So all this stacks up, okay? And that's where we're looking at this setup to sell, okay? Now, the idea here initially, again, all our setups are very, very mechanical in terms of the targets and stop, which is going to give us an average of 1:2, right? You can see 1:2 based on just the ratios itself. But this trade here is where I decided to not put my take profit just there, right? I look at it from a high time frame perspective and say, there's a good possibility we can come lower and kind of like, pass out this zone here, which, very, very nicely tap it somewhere around the 146.8 to 147 zone, right? From the perspective of the H4, the H1 target was here, right? Around 147.8. And then if you extend it to like 147, yes, it's an additional 80 pips, but from a ratio perspective, that's quite a significant um, profit potential, right? So if you kind of look at this here, 147.8 give you a risk reward 1:2, 147 give you about 3 point something, right? Obviously, I did not go all the way to just exactly at 147. I was like somewhere around here, 1:3. Um, I managed to get out that, right? So yeah, so this was a very, very nice little trade to end off the week. Of course, with the news coming in, right? First Friday of the month, the dollar actually went weaker. Hey, yeah, so that's a little bit about the management of this, where you can actually consider, an entry on the lower time frame like H1, but then you also consider how far can this particular trade move, right, on a higher time frame, so that you can extend targets potentially as well. Okay, so what's next on dollar yen, right? What's the view from here? I would still be looking at the possibility of the market really coming down and retest this area, right? So short term, we are technically still expecting this, and perhaps from there, the market may then push back up, after which. But I think right now we probably just want to be patient for now, because we did see this get back up, right? So kind of a little bit of a V-shaped formation right now. So I would personally give it maybe another 1 or 2 days, including today, and see how price is going to develop first. Okay, that's the take on the dollar yen right now. Then we have the precious metal commodities on gold and silver, right? I think gold and silver really made an impulsive push to the upside, right? So in the Elliott wave perspective, um, this move here is quite obvious, likely gonna be a wave tree. So in other words, if this is gonna be, an initial label, it will be something like that, right? Which means after wave three has concluded and it starts to do some sort of a pullback, we will then expect the pullback to be wave four, okay, and we'll be looking at potential buy trade opportunities from there, right? I would say right now it's a little bit too early to start measuring the fit, right? Because price is still currently extending to the upside, it's pushing to the upside. But once the upside is more or less concluded and price starts to show sign of a retracement, okay, oftentimes the wave 4 will come in between the 236 and 382, right? So that will be the area to look up for in terms of the completion of the pullback, and then we'll look for opportunities to get involved in the upside from there. Okay, so likely, um, I would say the earliest possible time that we might get an opportunity to get involved in the buy will be maybe closer towards the end of this week, if not next week, right? Really depends on how the correction is going to build in. Right, so that's on gold. I think silver is going to be very, very similar here. Okay, see that the extended move here is strong, it's impulsive, right? So internally, that's how we're going to look out for it. Okay, so something like this. Again, you can see expected pullback in terms of fit ratios is going to be around that 382. Okay, but obviously you want to see and wait for the price to actually do a corrective pullback first, right? Right now, there's really nothing much. It's a very, very early sign of it. Okay, so there's two very, very similar. Crude oil. So crude oil managed to take up that low there, did a pullback, and did another impulsive push. And then of course right now it's showing sign of a pullback, right? Now this pullback here as of now it's a little bit impulsive. So obviously you don't want to just like look to sell once it reached the 50 and 618, right? Ideally we want to see some sort of a three wave pullback, right? So give it a little bit of time. Maybe by Wednesday things will get a little bit clearer, right? We want this to pull back correctively. If it comes back towards the 15,618 as our key level correctively, then we're going to look for that setup to get involved in the sell. Okay, very, very simple structure over here. But for now, nothing much has really set up yet. okay, we just start to identify the key areas that we can look up for. Right, so that's crude oil. S&P is generally still bullish. Okay, a little detail here that you might want to just be a little bit careful is this might be some sort of a five-wave structure, right? Now, I don't think this is gonna be an ending diagonal, right? I feel that the equities market in general right now is still gonna be bullish. But since we're looking at a possible diagonal structure here, which means this can be some sort of maybe a leading diagonal, in a macro big picture perspective, um, this here can be perhaps, this here can be maybe wave 4 in a way, and then this is like one of the fifth wave, right? First wave of the fifth wave, right? Because I don't think this is going to be the ending diagonal, kind of like end of the uptrend. Okay, I still feel that going into end of this year, equities are likely going to continue to be bullish. So what this means is that there's a good possibility we'll just anticipate some sort of a correction, okay, where short-term price can do some sort of a correction back towards the area somewhere around 6370. So obviously short term we can look for the sell trade, right? If we have a clear setup. To be honest, right now there isn't much of a clear setup. Sell it at this very moment. Okay, let me just bring you to S&P, right? So this is our buy trade setup that we managed to write on last week as well. It came down quite a bit, right, in terms of the drawdown, but then again, it was a V-shaped formation. If you still remember last Monday, we did talk about this as well, right? I mentioned that if, because last Monday is where we got tagged in, right? Sorry, Tuesday, right? Because last week I remember kind of combined the session here on Tuesday, yeah, I remember that. We did not manage to do the session on Monday, so we did it on Tuesday, and that's where this was triggered during the session. And then I did share that, if we get a V shape, we can actually keep the trade and then just manage by shifting stops to break even. And, kind of share a little bit like after we enter the trade, what do we expect and how do we manage the trade, right? So a very, very good example here as well, where when we get a V-shaped bounce, it's always good to just shift stops to break even and just let the trade run and see how it goes, right? And this particular trade very nicely just continue to move towards the target from here on. Yeah, nothing much, right? Very, very straightforward. So moving forward, we did have this nice little impulsive push down, but right now we really don't have any of the swing low get taken out yet, right? And of course, on the H4 time frame perspective, we are still pushing higher. So I'm not too comfortable in looking at the sell until price can start doing something like that, right? Where you take out the swing low again. And if it leaves behind some sort of a market imbalance here, then we can look to trade it short term to the downside, somewhere with our entry point here. So it takes time, right? It takes time for the market to actually develop all this move. So right now, as of today, there's really nothing there, okay? So that's on S&P, right? So expectation for this week is likely we're gonna see some sort of a correction, a retracement to the downside, and we might get that opportunity to trade it, to the downside in the near term, right? Really depends on how the market is gonna set up for us. Okay, then we have the pound yen. So pound yen is where I got out at break even. I think some of you who managed to trade more actively managed to get out maybe with profits. Yeah, but this one here, it's still basically bullish overall. Pattern structure wise, it's not the clearest, to be honest. Last week when we were looking to sell, we're basically looking at this expectation, right? So that was the trade we took, but it didn't really go further towards our target. A good thing, again, managing the trade allow us to get our break even. And we don't need to worry about it, right? Once we get heck out break even, just look for the next trade opportunity. Yeah, so pound yen this week here, as of now, the expectation is still pretty much the same, right? We're expecting this to pull back, kind of like potentially tag this low and then push back up, because then this would give us a very nice clean 1, 2, and 3, right? So we'll see. Right now the market is still kind of like really consolidating within the range, so we'll need time, right? We'll leave this for now. Odd yen bullish as well. Okay, we can't break out of that channel here. You can see that. Okay, so bullish, but we'll always need to wait for that pullback. Okay, so the market isn't pulling back at this moment yet, so we're just going to be patient. Okay, you don't want to be buying at top. Wait for the corrective pullback, and then we'll look to buy, right? So potentially this low here can act as some sort of a potential liquidity. The market may actually at that level before the bounce back up. Okay, so we'll be patient on this. Pound odd. Okay, so pound odd here we are anticipating some sort of a corrective pullback, maybe not as deep towards a 50%. Still a very early sign, right? But potentially this can be the development of things, right? Or potentially just coming back towards this area here, right? So right now, we probably would just want to wait for price to tag that key level, okay, and then see if we can get some sort of a sell trade setup. Okay, so I would say this level here around 2.0690 would definitely be the key area, right? So this high here. Yeah, so again, it's still an early start of the week. Again, most of our setups actually comes in second half of the week, right? So just need to have some of this in your watch list and keep an eye on those key levels as we progress. Okay. Yep. Okay. So this one here, yeah, just keep an eye and wait for it. Okay. Lastly, in my list, before I kind of look at some of the instruments that you guys are interested in, we have Bitcoin. Okay. So BTC here in general, we're gonna be expecting more upside, especially after the market has did this retracement. Okay, so if you kind of look at it, right, when the market took up its all-time high, you do observe that there's a lot of like posting, there's a lot of news talking about how Bitcoin is breaking all-time high, and then very quickly it retraces quite a bit. Okay, it's not a small retracement; it's actually a pretty huge retracement because it comes back almost as deep as 60%, right, of this entire move. So that's the part where something you want to take away, right? If you're pretty new over here is I always say, you know, when the market actually made a move to the upside or to the downside, basically when a market breaks new high or new low, you don't want to just jump into the bandwagon and then buy or sell, right? You always wait for that next move, right? You don't need to like be buying. You don't need to be the first person to jump in and buy, right? You always want to wait for market to do some sort of a corrective pullback before you commit to that particular trade. Kind of similar here as well, right? While we did see some sort of a support bounce at the 618, you want more confirmation than just that, right? So for me here, I want to see the market actually take out this high at 113450 with some sort of an impulsive late, right? Because if you observe how this has developed around that 618, you do realize that yes, the market has reacted off the 618, but how's the reaction, right? The reaction is very corrective in nature. What I mean by that is you can see how the market actually struggles to go up, right? It went up, it came down quite a bit, it went up, it came down quite a bit. This is what I call corrective nature, right? If the market is not very decisive in going up, right, and it's just going up correctively, it's not a good sign. Okay, so what you want to ideally see, okay, if I were to pull an example for you, okay, you want to see something sort of this type of move. You're gonna see something sort of like this type of move, right? Where you can see the candles carry momentum. Okay, something like that, that would be great, right? If something like that happened, um, then obviously it's very straightforward and it's very clear. Okay, the market is starting to go higher. You wait, okay, for the correction, and then you can get in from there, right? So that's the idea behind it, right? So TC as of now will probably just wait for the impulsive break to the upside first. Oh, hey, yep. So let's see some of the questions or potential instruments that you guys have over here. So I see Irene, William, Dylan, Novell, right? Janto is here with us. Yep, so let's see. Janto has a question on dollar franc and the Kiwi dollar, right? So let's take a look at dollar franc. Okay. Um, right, so I kind of shared some time back. For those of you who follow that, great, right? I'm not actively kind of monitoring it because this is not part of my trade plan. Yeah, but you can see how nicely those were done. Okay, so what's next? Okay, what's next on dollar franc? Let me clean up a little bit on all this here. Okay. One thing I'm looking at is this pullback looks very corrective in nature, but there's a good possibility the market would potentially continue to come lower and tag up this area. Okay, so you probably do not want to be too aggressive in buying, but I think short term, there's a good possibility you can look to sell. And there's a good chance that the market would likely just continue to develop correctively to the downside. Okay, towards this area here, right, which is somewhere around 0.79 to 0.7880. Okay, basically this swing low and this swing low. Yeah, so dollar franc short term sell, I would just shift this invalidation short term, okay, towards this swing high, right, which is 0.87, 0.807D. Okay, so that's the look on that. I mean, on the lower time frame, if price can do a pullback here, you might get a short-term sell setup, right? Because over here we can already see that liquidity sweep. We can see that nice little break of structure. This move obviously leaves behind some sort of a failure gap. Okay, but of course we are near the bottom, so you just need to be patient and wait for the pullback. Okay, so this one here has a setup. Kiwi dollar. Take a look at Kiwi dollar. Hey, again, let's clean up a little bit on the previous drawing. Okay, that's okay. Hey, we came down, we took out this area. Right now, the market is seemingly doing some sort of a pullback here. I would still put this as an invalidation right now. So, currently market is testing here. Okay, so what I'll be looking at here is we are testing the zone. I want to see how price is going to react at this zone. Okay, because if this can give us some sort of this kind of structure, which is basically our setup, then this will provide a sell trade opportunity to retest this. Okay, if we don't get this, then there isn't any setup, right? In other words, means that the price is literally just pushing beyond that. This is invalidated. Then there's a very good chance price will just retest that high anyway, right? Something like that. So keep an eye, by tomorrow you might get an idea how price is going to react off this zone. Got it? Okay, so that's on Kiwi dollar. Okay, next one here is the dollar yen. Now dollar yen, I'm not looking at a setup right now. Okay, to be honest, you just need to wait for the next one, right? But for now, there isn't much of a setup right now that we can look into for dollar yen. Okay, euro Canadian. Let's see for euro CAD. Okay, oops. Okay, euro Canadian. First thing that's very obvious is the market is testing this high. Okay, it's not really breaking out of that high, kind of like the rejection of that high right now. So from Elliott wave perspective, right, a simple projection here we're gonna look out for is we're gonna expect price to develop into a potential sort of an expanding structure, right, which looks something like, okay. So can we look for that potential sell move? The answer is yes, but really depends on do we get that setup that we want, right? Right now we don't. Okay, right now it's just a very, very early sign that seems to be rejecting off from that high, but there's no confirmation right now. Okay, so if you ask me, overall directional bias is still gonna be bullish, right? Overall directional bias is still bullish, but short term we can expect this pullback to come back towards the 1.6 level, right? We do a little bit of fit here. The 1.6 is probably going to be near the 50% mark, right? Yeah. Okay, so that will be the expectation on Euro Canadian. Cool. Good. So I think generally that's about it for here. I think those are the pairs that you guys put in. Um, yeah, I mean that's generally for the week. We'll need to then just keep track on how price is going to continue to develop from here on. As of today, based on what we're seeing, I think the clearest one that I'm personally really keeping a close watch for now is pound dollar. Okay, definitely there are some potential ones that might build in throughout the week. But I think as of today, the clearest possible one is, yeah, gonna be the pound dollar, right? I mean, pound odd has a possibility that something might set up later part of this week for a sell, but again, we'll see. Right? Yeah, so generally that's from me for this week. Hopefully give you guys some insights into what you can look out for and prepare for, the upcoming week here. So yep, all the best. And as usual, I'll just keep you guys updated through the daily emails in terms of like market analysis as well as potential setups. Okay, all the best, and we'll see you guys in the next one.